My name is Mary Umberger, and I teach in the humanities area here at the college. I teach mostly public speaking, but also interpersonal communication and small group communication, all at the Fort Omaha campus. I've been at MCC for over 20 years. Yes, over 20 years. I'm originally from a small town in central Nebraska, and it's called Elwood. I grew up on a ranch out there, and then I did my bachelor's at UNL and decided I needed to get out of Nebraska, so I did my master's and my PhD at the University of Maryland outside of Washington, D.C. I worked at the Department of State under George Shultz when he was Secretary of State, and I worked for the Communication and Information Policy Bureau, and decided that I didn't really want to be in federal government, so I went back to grad school, and then after that I just did a series of teaching jobs. Most recently I was at UNO before I came to MCC. I chose Metropolitan Community College because I wanted a full-time job after I finished my PhD. Having said that, I didn't know a lot about community colleges, but I thought, I'll go for that full-time job. And I fell in love with the students, not in a creepy way, but they're so interesting, and they're really different from each other, and they're different from me. And Metro is a great place to work because I feel like I really help my students, and I feel like my students really want to be here, and that's very rewarding. I like the schedule. And that's probably not the best reason, but here's what I mean. I grew up on a ranch, and ranch time is cyclical time. It's not linear. You do things according to the season. And academic time is cyclical as well. You do things according to the time of the quarter or the semester or the year. And I didn't like federal government work because it was linear. It was not cyclical. And when I went back to school and I went to get my degrees, I realized that's what clicked for me. So it's really, I love teaching, but I really like the cyclical nature of it. I stay at Metro because it's a really good place to work for what I like to do. I like to interact with people every day. I like the cyclical timing. I like different people. I like my colleagues. So I think though really what keeps me at Metro has more to do with just the student body and the eagerness of students to gain and master information that will help them in their lives. They're really sincere about their learning. My mentors are kind of interesting because I never thought I wanted to be a teacher because my mom was a teacher, and I didn't want to do the same thing my mom did. But after years of school, I realized that most of my mentors were teachers. So my advisor, Dr. Klump, but also just great teachers that I've had along the way that made me realize what I wanted to do, but also pushed me to do better, things that I wasn't very good at. So yeah, teachers in general, I think, have been my mentors. My teaching philosophy would probably be described best as coaching. I do like to be the center of attention sometimes, so I do a little bit of lecturing, but the older I get, the more I realize that I'm better off helping them to do what they need to do rather than being the one who always has the answers, because I don't always have the answers. So I think I'm more of a coach than anything else. Well, after 20 years, motivation, you would think motivation to be excited to teach would be a problem, but it never is. And here's why. All of my students, even though I'm teaching the same class, I have different students every quarter, and in public speaking, they're talking about different things all the time. And so I learn different things every quarter from my students, and I tell them jokingly that I'm the best person to invite to a party because I know a little bit about a whole lot of things, which makes great cocktail conversation. And I know those things because they have taught me over the years. So motivation really isn't a problem. The ability to be themselves, to be genuine. I think when people take public speaking, they focus on the fact that the audience is judging them, and I can't tell them that's not true because there is always an element of judgment, but if you move away from that being the focus and instead focusing on being yourself and trying to genuinely communicate with who your audience is and make a connection and establish rapport, you're going to be fine. And so I hope that they learn that from me. I hope they learn to be themselves. I would like my students to remember me as fabulously funny. I would like my students to remember that public speaking is a skill that I practice. I practice it in front of them every day that I'm in there. And because of that, I'd like to think that I actually get better at it. So I hope they remember that I'm teaching something that I actually do on a regular basis. And because of that, I know a few things about it. I think students at Metro teach a lot of lessons to faculty who are willing to learn them. And I have been willing to learn the lessons that they teach. I have learned perseverance. My students persevere through some amazingly difficult situations. And I think learning about my students' lives is a privilege because I learn things that I would never know in my own life unless I knew them. And so they're really brave and they persevere and they try really hard. And those are all great lessons. Well, technology has changed my teaching in some really productive ways, but I would also jokingly say that in public speaking, not a lot has changed since Aristotle. So there is this element that what I'm teaching them to do is somewhat not impacted by technology, that face-to-face connection that you make with people. Now, having said that, I love Blackboard. I love the online learning system because it enables me to be more efficient and it enables my students to be 24/7 when they want to do their work. They're able to do it and submit it whenever they need to. I think that that's vital for today's student. I also really like recording my students' speeches and then allowing them to watch themselves and evaluate themselves. And so that's become increasingly easy. We used to have this huge camcorder that we had to roll around on a tripod, and we had VHS tapes, and it was really a production. And now I take my iPad in, I record their speeches, I upload them to Blackboard, they watch them on Blackboard. My online students record their speeches on phones and then upload them. That has become so much simpler, and I'm really grateful for that. In terms of teaching is actually, this is going to sound like the answer to an interview question. My biggest challenge in terms of teaching is actually my greatest reward, and that is how to work with students who are all in a different place and yet in the same classroom. I think that is a real challenge because if you spend a lot of time with students who need time spent with them, then you are neglecting students that are not in that position, who actually could take the course even without me being there. And so figuring out how to deal with students who have different levels of need within the same classroom, I think is really challenging. But having said that, I think it's the best thing about community colleges. Everybody's in there together. I have a passion for exercise, and I am not a marathoner or a really competitive athlete, but I enjoy hiking and biking and walking and running and weightlifting, and I like to do all of those things and do them with friends and family. And I particularly like to hike in Italy, because in Italy, at the end of every hike, there's a good restaurant and either a good beer or a good glass of wine. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an action, but a habit. I'm Dr. Mary Umberger. I'm in the humanities area at Metropolitan Community College, and I teach public speaking at the Fort Omaha campus.